Sexual values in indigenous cultures and the Stone Age. The indigenous cultures and the Stone Age had many different perspectives on sexual values, but they strongly believed in them. The beliefs were passed down from generation to generation. The elders in indigenous cultures were the most respected because they either started the culture or they were the closest ones to those who started the culture. In strong traditional communities, the indigenous culture clearly focuses on respecting the beliefs of tribal elders, who traditionally dictate appropriate behaviors, beliefs, and practices. As for the Stone Age, they have some basic beliefs and sexual values and were some of the first human beings to walk this earth. Human beings' natural instinct is to reproduce, and since some of the first humans were the Stone Age people, they wanted to reproduce even though they had a moral code. Since they wanted to reproduce with each other, the moral code was broken sometimes, and this is where cheating came into play. Ethnographic descriptions of hunter-gatherer societies point to the same conclusion. Some hunter-gatherer women entertain dozens of sexual partners in the course of their lives. Although some of the indigenous cultures, hunter and gatherers, women cheated with other people, it is unsure that the Stone Age people cheated and slept around with random people other than the people in their tribe. The indigenous cultures as a whole had many different beliefs on sexual values, but all cultures respected the beliefs of their elders. The elders take their beliefs very seriously and require obedience to them. In addition to the indigenous community, an influx of black Africans produces a growing source of Australian immigrants into Western Australia. Elders of black Africans in South Africa feel that modern concepts of sex education corrupt the moral status of young people, leading to loss of respect for cultural norms. Currently in South Africa, unmarried women are not allowed to speak openly about their active sexual status due to hostile feedback from elders. Modern sex education takes place because the youth are learning about it at school and from other people rather than their society, and the elders can't control of what the youth is hearing. It's very understandable that the elders don't want the unmarried woman to speak of their sexual status because the elders don't want the younger girls in their culture to become girls sleeping around with every man, catching a disease, nor get the label of a tramp or whore. Ultimately, no one in any culture, family, or religion wants their girls to be seen as a disgusting persons to have sex with just anyone. Sex is a very sacred thing and should be shared with the one they love. Indigenous cultures' beliefs are very strong, traditional, and some not so traditional. Some cultures possess a high degree of syncretism and the support of the coexistence of Christian religion along with premarital sex and pregnancy. But for the Indians and Australian population, sex remains a taboo activity. To traditional Indian culture views sex as a private act that should only occur between married couples, keeping young people uncorrupted by health knowledge or sex education. Even though the indigenous cultures have very strong beliefs, the modern world is starting to corrupt their youth because in the world today, sex isn't seen as a sacred thing anymore. It is more seen as a use for sexual pleasure and just to get people off. They don't do it to the person they love, and sex nowadays could cause a whole lot of terrible things. Youth receive sex education delivered through media, at schools, and to a lesser extent at home. The media supplies by far the largest source of sex education material, though at the expense of providing a format of information particularly detrimental for younger people. Sex education in Australia targets secondary school students with an average age of 13 and a half years, but for use encountering sex at a younger age, this is too late. The first modern humans lived in the Stone Age, so their beliefs are the basic beliefs of human society, meaning that the moral codes came from the earth, nature, and among themselves. The Stone Age people didn't have anything else but those things to base their rules of life off of, other than experience. They didn't have the intelligence and all the knowledge before they were engaging in sex. For example, knowing that having sex a certain amount of times and with certain people can cause diseases. But eventually, when people started dying from having sex, then the Stone Age people started realizing the terrible consequences that sex can have. Even though some people from the Stone Age cheated and didn't know how valuable it is to have sex after marriage or with a loved one, the Stone Age people still did reproduce with the ones they loved and valued that in their own way. But cheating did first date back to the Stone Age people because all they knew was to reproduce. Some might argue that cheating reflects the moral depravity of modern times. They would be mistaken. Stone Age infidelity was a recurrent problem. Indeed, our sexual anatomy, physiology, and behavior were explicitly designed to confront this issue. The Stone Age people did not care as much as people do today in society about cheating. When Stone Age people would cheat, it would usually be on a trip to hunt and gather for their family. so they would be a good distance away from their family, or the spouse being cheated on would not know what's going on at all because they didn't have phones, social media, or ways to talk to their spouses about how long they are going to be, where they are, and who they are with. Stone Age infidelity happened. We all should care because we have inherited this from our ancestors. Other beliefs of the Stone Age was that the people were really never in relationships nor married. They would just reproduce among each other, even with the same sex sometimes. Some scholars believe that they did not live in monogamous relationships and nuclear families as it is commonly believed. They think that people lived in communes. At any given time, a woman could have had sexual and romantic relations with several men or women. Similarly, men could have either at the same time or one after the other relations with several women and also maybe with several men. There was no concept of marriage for life or the nuclear family. Even pregnant women would have sex with many different men during the pregnancy because the women thought that the child in the womb could get all of the qualities of the different men she slept with while being pregnant. Not only if they were a good hunter, but also good at communicating with spirits. The indigenous cultures in the Stone Age both had different views and beliefs on sexual values. People may not realize this, but our sexual values date back to the Stone Age people who are our ancestors, the first humans to walk this earth. All the Stone Age people wanted to do was reproduce new lives into their society so their society could grow bigger and stronger as well. Whereas the indigenous cultures didn't want their people or youth to reproduce if it was for the wrong reasons, such as premarital sex, having sex with a bunch of different people, and having sex with ones that are not their loved ones. Both of their main perspectives on sexual values differ from each other in a big way. The Stone Age wanted to reproduce and didn't really show a care of how they reproduced nor who it was with, whereas indigenous cultures only wanted their people to reproduce for the right reasons. Didn't want their cultures to be open to sex education and didn't want other people than their culture preaching about sex to them. Overall, both the indigenous cultures and the Stone Age's sexual values differed from each other, but they both reproduced to make their own society grow. If someone were to ask another person that started something and ask them what would be the main thing they would want to see in their startup before and after they died, the person would say to see the thing they started up grow and stick around for a long time. That's what both parties did. The Stone Age created a society of human beings on this earth that has reached a massive amount of billions of humans. The indigenous cultures made so many cultures that it's hard to keep track of all of them now. Overall, the natural human instinct is to reproduce.